Okay, so I guess I'm left with the task of introducing Israel's favourite goyim. Don't quote me on that one. So Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan, I met you about 9.5 years ago. It was during Tzuk Eitan, Protective Edge, Operation Protective Edge, and you had just finished a call with an Israeli pilot who had told you that he'd had to abort a mission that he had to kill a senior Hamas commander a total of 17 times because there were assumed to be civilians in the area. And you'd asked him at the time, do you remember this? Do you remember that call? And you'd asked him at the time if it was frustrating to go out to this mission and just keep having to turn back the plane. And he turned around to you and said without any equivocation, absolutely not. And you said to me that day, this is why the Jewish people need to be proud. And you've come here, what, I think you said 50 times to Israel? And yeah, have you been here 50 times? And he became like this household name, even among Hebrew speakers, and basically became the most famous, a Brit that's more famous in Israel than the Beatles. Can I say that? Okay.
He's a great singer as well.
Later on in the show, he'll give us a nice rendition of Hatikva. Okay, so I'm going to kick this off by asking you the question that's on everyone's minds, and I grilled you a bit about this last night, Douglas. Why? Why are you doing this? Seriously, you've got no skin in the game. Why are you sticking out your neck like this for the Yids?
Can I for the what? For the Yids? That does sound slightly anti-Semitic, but...
From Tottenham, to be fair.
All right, fair enough. One clap. That's the maximum I'm going to get tonight. Can I, although I am a goy, is it goyim or goy? We're goyim, okay. But I'm also, if anyone's interested, I'm also an extremely talented Shabbat goy. My services have been used quite extensively by the community from Kiryat Shimona. Anyway, sorry. So why am I here? I obviously there's no question about who's in the right and who's in the wrong in this fight. And it's I was taught when I was very young to know right from wrong, and it's my duty to support those who are right. And I can do so in a relatively small way by bringing to bear my 30 years of military experience in fighting the kind of terrorists that the IDF is fighting tonight.
I can't sit here and not say something. I'm not going to allow these canards and smears and lies and defamations to just go on. And I suppose that's one of the things that's always driven me and my interest in this country, as well as my love for it, is I don't like lies being told. And I think that Israel has been on the receiving end of some of the biggest, longest, deepest and most wounding lies of our era. So I believe that in the simple cause of moral hygiene, it's necessary to try. Every single operation in Gaza since Hamas took over, it's all a replay of the same thing. And so my own view is anything other than actual victory by the Israelis in this conflict is unacceptable. Because all of these things, all of these efforts to make Israel fight to a stalemate, inadvertently or otherwise, will simply prepare the groundwork for the next war. And this country deserves not to be forced into perpetual war. It has to get peace.
Today, a letter was written by Iris Chaim, who is the mother of Yotam Chaim, one of the 3 hostages who was tragically killed by IDF soldiers last week in a case of mistaken identity. And I wanted to ask you, Douglas, because I know that you've contended with this question a lot about accusations that this is it shows that the IDF is demonstrably evil because they're actually killing their own, or that these are people that came out, surrendered, held a white flag, and this shows what they're doing to Palestinian civilians.
One of the things that has genuinely shocked me since October 7th has been a very basic thing, and that is just a lack of empathy for the people of this country internationally. A lack of empathy. These were Jewish children, and in city after city, sociopaths, trained to be sociopaths by the societies they are in, tore down these posters. I spoke to a member of the Beaver's family the other day who described going to Dublin and seeing posters of the 10-month-old baby in his family that had been ripped down in Dublin. I mean, this is a sickness of a kind that it's not the fault of Israel, that's the fault of the people who do it. But I just point to that because this lack of empathy has been since the day itself. And we see it in everything. This case, and I said this on air earlier, this case of these 3 these 3 hostages who were shot. I mean, you're right. Much of the media has covered it as if it's yet more evidence of the brutality of the idea. They even killed their own. They decide. I mean, just imagine the lives of the soldiers who shot those 3 men.
Can I
The
just
conscience is also
interject here and
Yeah.
say that this mother, I forgot to mention this mother, Iris Haim, wrote a letter to the soldiers, an open letter, saying that she wrote, "I love you."
Yes.
To the soldiers,
Yes.
"I don't blame you. This is not your fault. This is Hamas's fault, and I'm
Absolutely.
hugging you from afar." And we're talking about empathy. This
Exactly.
woman whose son that she was waiting for, it's
And you know, but I just think that again, everything that this country does, everything the IDF does, it could all, even a tragedy like that, instead of recognising what a tragedy that is for everybody involved, they use it as a weapon against Israel, and that really has slightly startled me in this conflict.
ask you, in a world of TikTok where Jesus is Palestinian, do you wonder if this is just sort of a myth of Sisyphus syndrome, where you're just pushing that rock up the hill, and do you ever get to a point where you ask, what's the point? Because
No, never actually. Not at all. Hardly, even if it was the case, I mean, what option have you got? You just want to sit at the bottom of the hill being crushed by the rock? I mean, it's a necessary task, even if it sometimes feels thankless, but I don't think it feels thankless at all. I do have a very strong belief that, I mean, you mentioned, by the way, we live in an age of TikTok. I don't live in an age of TikTok. I don't know if Richard does.
Very big TikTok man.
You strike me as the sort. But no, look, it's true that everyone's attention spans have been zapped by social media and much more. And it's true that there are whole realms of online in which big lies are able to come out and really just rocket around the world. Nevertheless, it remains my view and also my experience that if you live in a world with 99 lies being told and one person tells the truth will win. I don't see why the Israelis have to be an experiment test case for that either. I don't think you should be. Again, I think you should have the right to live in peace and know that the border you have does not contain genocidal maniacs on the other side who wish to kill you all.
Okay, so any questions from the audience, preferably from someone without a British accent?
Yes. Someone could differentiate a harmful person and a non-harmful person. How would you do it? How would you go about it? And how do you think it should be tackled?
I love this immigration policy.
Well,
It's amazing.
Obviously, the first thing I do is to make Richard Kemp the Minister of Defence.
I assume you'll be Prime Minister, will you?
If the nation calls. I actually think there are several. It's a very good question, because I think countries like the one we're from are in some serious trouble of our own, as we have seen in recent months with the extraordinary, appalling demonstrations on our streets, including one set for Remembrance Day, when we remember the dead of the 2 world wars. I think it's been shameful. If there's one thing I would change, it is this, and I've said this publicly since 7th October. I want no Hamas supporters in my country. And that's quite easy to arrange, in my view. One of the most prominent such figures in the UK, and we have been mad to allow this, but we have allowed it, is a man called Mohammed Sawalha. He was former military commander for Hamas in the West Bank. He got a British passport in the 2000s. To get a British passport, you have to, among other things, sign a form saying you're a person of good character. I would submit that he is not a person of good character, and that he lied on his form when he said he was. So I would like to see his citizenship stripped, and I would like to see him deported, and to see him try his luck in Gaza. The university heads who you referred to, it's not really a case of just them, it's about the rot that appointed them. Claudine Gay of Harvard has been exposed not just as a moral ignoramus, but as also a plagiarist, and a serial plagiarist. And any student at Harvard who had been proved to commit the plagiarism she had committed would have been chucked out of Harvard. So perhaps the plagiarism doesn't matter anymore at Harvard, but we really know what the story is there, which is that she was not appointed because she was a great scholar, she was appointed because she was a black woman. And in America today, very sadly, identity trumps everything else. And it is, I think, fatal for America. I mean, this country is the army, the people I meet here are a testimony, to my mind. God knows you haven't got everything right, but nobody does. But this country is a testimony to the fact that it doesn't matter what your colour is, your sex, you've got to go out and fight for your country, defend your country. If the idea of Israeli society was predicated on, do we have enough black women at the forefront in Gaza at the moment? It would be, but that's because it's a luxury belief what America is doing.
Far from it. I spoke at a university in Bristol. My daughter went there, but apart from that, it's one of the most problematic universities in the UK. Sorry, it's not. You went to Oxford, did you?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not quite as problematic as Oxford. But
Strange bit of shade for it.
there are some graduates that are okay. But anyway, I spoke at a event at Oxford about Israel. Bristol about Israel. Yeah, easily mistaken. And there was, as always, I always hope for a large-scale protest when I speak at universities and normally get them. And there was one there. Afterwards, I went to a pub across the road with the students that hosted the event. And in that pub, on another table, big long table, about 20 people sitting there, students who had been protesters, and under the table were placards saying Kemp is a war criminal, etc. The usual stuff, all correct. And I went over and sat at their table with them. And one girl said, "You can't sit here." And I said, "Why? Is it a pub I can sit right?" She said, "No, you're a war criminal." I said, "Well, there's no law that says a war criminal can't sit at a table." Anyway, so I spoke to them for about 2 hours. And at the end of it, several of these students said to me, "We literally have never heard that side of the argument. They just don't ever hear it." And I'm not saying I converted them all to being pro-Israel, but I hope anyway, by kind of closed discourse, made them think about it, something they'd never heard before. And that is totally common. And I think our governments have a responsibility to try and dislodge that with the truth.
Okay, so hang on, guys, arms down, because I'm just going to take this one by the sheer chutzpah that this guy actually passed me a note. And I'm very impressed by his resourcefulness.
What does chutzpah mean?
Audacity.
Okay, audacity.
Word you must know.
My Hebrew is not perfect.
With his phone number.
And it's, well, not quite. He is a major. I'm a major. Jim Peters, US military retired, and I have a question for the Colonel, and this is on paper with Wonder Woman. You see that?
Can I have that? Can I keep that afterwards?
Keep that. So whoever you are, Jim Peters.
Right here, sir.
With the accent of it.
Hoorah!
Hoorah! Oh, I get the mic. Well, it's special treatment. VIP.
Okay, yes, Major Jim Peters, retired American military officer. Wow.
Volunteer in Israel now.
Yeah, look, the love, wow, the love. First time in Israel. Speechless. Anyway, sir, we both served in Afghanistan together. We've served in the desert together, and I would like for you to explain in detail, how and what the term fog of war means to these brave IDF soldiers, and I say brave IDF soldiers that I see day in and day out serving this country, fighting for democracy, fighting for freedom.
And they're thrown into Gaza, which I would say is probably one of the most treacherous and demanding battlefields that any soldier has ever fought on in the history of warfare. And they're expected to always make the right decisions. That simply cannot happen. But the enemy is trying to fool you all the time. The enemy is trying to make you think that the reality in front of your eyes is not the reality in front of your eyes. And so when we think about the tragic killing of the 3 hostages, in no way do I excuse what happened, and it's not my place to excuse it or otherwise. But let's not forget that these soldiers were in that terrible environment I mentioned. Hamas have attempted numerous times to surrender, including using white flags, to persuade the IDF they're going to surrender, and then kill them when they attempt to take their surrender. It's happened time and again in this conflict and previous conflicts. These guys called out in Hebrew. Hamas have used speakers broadcasting Hebrew messages with a child's voice calling out Abba from within inside a building. That happened to my knowledge at least once, and the soldiers went in, about 7 of them, 4 of them were killed and 2 were wounded in that attempt at deception. A doll, a Hebrew child's doll that speaks Hebrew was used in an attempt to lure soldiers into a building. This is the kind of thing that happens in war. And when soldiers are faced with a situation, they sometimes have just a split second to make the right decision. And sometimes it's wrong.
We do this. I would just say, whether I can answer it or not, it's the honour of my life to be standing in the lines. One other thing, which is this. Extraordinary times produce extraordinary people. And moments of great trial are, among other things, the moment when you produce new leaders, new heroes, new exemplars to the Jewish nation and to the world. I have been so moved in recent months by encountering people of 18, 19, 20, 21. I met a young woman the other day who was 21, she was an expert on Yemen. I just thought, I can't wait to know. I was like, her contemporary of 21 in America is being expensively educated to become stupid and wicked. We are producing remarkable young men and women every hour of every day, and they will be an example not just to the people of Israel, but to the people of the world.
Well, Douglas has been a great warm-up act. I don't